culture.
Ah, Superman. Boring old white bread, big blue Boy Scout Superman. Just helping people, being nice. Very tedious. Plus, he has pretty much every superpower going, so you can never really tell any interesting stories with him because you know he's never going to get hurt or die. Except for that one time he did, but then didn't. Well, guess what? DC are apparently also bored of the all-American man canon, so have done tons of sideline stories of what-if versions of Supes. With this in mind, I'm Jules of WhatCulture.com, and this is 10 insane alternative versions of Superman you won't believe exist. Number 10. Real-life Superman. Superboy Prime, who orchestrated the continuity-shredding Infinite Crisis, was supposed to be a Clark Kent of our reality. He was a big fan of the Superman comic books and eventually broke through the multiverse to face him, going a bit wrong in the process. This wasn't the first time a fanboy became Superman, though. Secret Identity from 2004 features a kid who gets named Clark Kent after the popular Superman comic book character, and hates his parents for it. Having to deal with endless teasing isn't easy for the real-world Clark, so he retreats to a broken-down tractor farm and calls it his fortress of solitude to escape his tormentors. One night, after falling asleep beneath the tractor, he awakes to find himself floating in the air and discovers he has all of Superman's powers. He gets a job at a big city paper and starts dating a woman called Lois, and then starts fighting crime as Superman. So it starts off weird, but then just goes exactly the same as Superman. Number 9. Barack Obama Superman. Just so you know, we're not being totally racist by thinking that a black Superman must resemble the US president, because creator Grant Morrison stated that Calvin Harris, the Superman of Earth 23, is explicitly based on Barack Obama. That's still pretty weird though, sticking the on-his-way-out president in a cameo in the epic Final Crisis crossover that saw the main Superman seeking out the help of his analogues across the multiverse. But then again, comics are stories about men, women, and Sasquatches with superpowers, so weird is par for the course. Number 8. High Counselor Superman. A surprise hit, Injustice Gods Among Us took place in a dystopian future with a dark backstory that was filled in by the tie-in comics. In the video game setting, the world is a war-torn battleground, with Batman leading an insurgency against the insane and murderous Superman, who has decided to take over the planet while wearing a fun new costume and calling himself High Counselor Superman. Now, the idea of a Man of Steel being bad isn't particularly novel, but the way that he cracks in the Injustice comics books is remarkably insane. Deciding he's bored of toying with the Dark Knight, the Joker instead sets his sights on Superman, tricking him into killing a pregnant Lois Lane, which has got Clark's baby, and dropping a nuclear bomb on Metropolis. Superman reacts in kind by snapping the Joker's neck, which in retrospect seems pretty fair. Number 7. Bruce Wayne Superman. In Superman Speeding Bullets, the orphaned Kal-El is adopted by Thomas and Martha Wayne, who give him the name of Bruce instead of Clark. Now, despite this fork in the road for the classic DC continuity, the Wayne parents still fall foul to a mugger who guns them down. Only this time he gets incinerated by young Bruce's heat vision. He feels vindicated that he wiped out his parents' murderer, but ashamed that his powers waited until they were beyond help to manifest, so he keeps them under wraps. That is until he grows up and finds it impossible to ignore the crime-ridden streets of Gotham City any longer. So he takes up the cowl and calls himself Batman! Except, technically he's Superman, but just in a Batman costume. You know what I mean. At the end of the story, Lois Lane convinces Bruce that the Batman costume is possibly a little dark, and it's only by adopting a friendlier, more colourful alter ego that he might drag Gotham out of its perennial darkness. Number 6. Centaur Superman. In terms of insanity, the Superman from whom gods destroy should probably be at the top of this list, but he's almost too ridiculous to celebrate in any way. The story indulges in both Greek mythology and alternate history, as the classic pantheon of gods meddle in human affairs to such a degree that Nazis win World War II and rule the world. Thanks a lot, Zeus, you big bearded jerk. That means you get a Third Reich version of Wonder Woman, which is insane enough, but the version of Superman in this dystopian alternative reality is the thing that really takes the biscuit. Or oats, because he's actually a centaur. After crossing a bunch of literal trolls and harpies, he gets cursed by a witch and then becomes half Superman, half horse, and then lives amongst a harem of centaur ladies. It's only after Lana Lang whips out a bridle and rides him like a pony that he returns to normal, just in time for the Nazis to be defeated, and for him, Lana, and Wonder Woman to live happily ever after on the moon. What? Number 5. Harvey Dent Superman. Inspired by Franz Kafka's The Metamorphosis, which is a nightmarish short story about a man who wakes up one morning to find himself slowly transforming into a beetle, the Tangent Universe's Superman was a regular guy who gets touched by a god force and finds his brain rapidly evolving so that he reaches a higher plane of existence. Or something like that. Also, this guy is called Harvey Dent, but he isn't Two-Face. But what he does have, though, is a bathrobe. My brain hurts. Number 4. Communist Superman. Mark Millar's Red Sun did the unthinkable, turning the epitome of truth, justice, and the American way into an icon for Soviet Russia. Of course, instead of the classic S-shield, he has a hammer and sickle, because Mark Millar is nothing if not subtle. Inspired by a Silver Age imaginary story where Supes lands in international waters between USA and the USSR, Red Sun depicts a Superman who is both a propaganda tool and a powerful weapon for Stalin, eventually taking control of the Communist Party himself and going to war with America's greatest champion, Lex Luthor. Along with featuring an insane commie version of Superman, there's also a Russian Batman who wears one of those big furry hats, so that's fun. Number 3. British Superman. A large number of the Superman Elseworlds tales are predicated on baby Clark Kent being found by somebody else in some other foreign land, and one of these Supermans was found in Weston-super-Mare. Co-writer John Cleese revels in this, making an absolute mockery of his home country through the lens of the Man of Steel. Named Colin Clark, his adoptive parents' corruption of Kal-El, the young superhero is raised with a stiff upper lip and what would the neighbours think mindset of a stereotypical young Englishman, which means that he keeps his amazing superpowers under wraps so as not to draw attention to himself or cause any sort of bother. It's only after becoming a writer for an awful tabloid newspaper and saving the Ruttles, which is a Beatles parody, that he adopts the Superman identity, which of course includes a bombastic Union Jack over his costume. Pretty goofy. Number 2. Tarzan Superman. Superman and Tarzan have actually teamed up before for Claws of the Catwoman, which was pretty fun, but Sons of the Jungle provided the real weird twist on both these characters' origins. Instead of landing in Kansas, baby Supes ends up in the jungle where he's raised by gorillas. Whereas Tarzan is never lost by his clumsy parents and grows up to be a bit of a posh English ponce called Lord Greystroke. Greystroke has an adventurous streak though, and on an expedition to the rainforest he stumbles across a superpowered chap in a loincloth who's painted a big S on his chest for no real reason.
It's not an S.
It all goes a bit jungle to jungle at the end when Greystroke decides that he actually quite likes the simple life of hanging out with gorillas and eating ants, and the primitive Superman abdicates his throne as Lord of the Jungle and makes his move to the big city. And number 1, Amish Superman. So imagine this, Mark and Pa Kent get a flat on their way to pick up the little bundle of power known as Kal-El, and instead he's found by an Amish couple. He grows up in the Amish community, completely cut off from modern society, and so instead of becoming humanity's greatest champion, nobody knows the Man of Steel even exists. Everything gets a bit worse from there as Mayor Lex Luthor teams up with bitter, crippled ex-hero Green Arrow to take down a team they assume are alien invaders, with Luthor grafting Kryptonian DNA he found in Kal-El's empty spaceship to Jimmy Olsen, creating a bizarro Superman clone with all of his powers. Eventually, evil Olsen's battle with the Justice League stumbles into an Amish community near Metropolis, where he's stopped from killing Batman by Kal-El. It turns out that he still had all of Superman's powers, but just chose to live a life shunning modern society and tending to fields instead of saving lives, which is hilarious, but also really selfish. And that's our list. Got any more insane Soup stories worth checking out? Well, let us know about them in the comments section below. And if you want to see a real Superman, you can follow me on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0. If you enjoyed the video, then like, share, and subscribe for more. As always, I've been Jules with WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.